Okay, today I want to talk to you about the energy of systematic white supremacy. The reason why I want to cover this topic in this way is because there's a lot of confusion out there about it and what it is and what it really means and what it looks like. So I'm covering it in this format and the energy of white supremacy. What is the energy behind it? So you have a different look and a better idea about what it really is and how it affects our lives in a little bit different way on a more core and base level. So, this core approach to the creative root of white supremacy will give you an understanding of the depths of its effects, yet also you can understand that the hold you may think it has in your life is not as strong as it may appear, because the whole base of systematic white supremacy is based on illusion. And when you can break that illusion, you can break the hold. Because illusion is the name of the game when it comes to how systematic white supremacy keeps its hold over everyone. And I'll discuss that later in another video. So let's first talk about the root cause. So I see white supremacy as the most systematically complex manifestation of fear. What is this fear? It's the fear of genetic annihilation. And it's so endemic, it's transferred into their DNA. Now, I don't think it started out that way. However, with most things that are repeated on a high emotional level or thought about on a life and death type of mentality, it begins to seep into and become part of your DNA structure. So I want you to think of your DNA as not merely a genetic code, but it's also an energetic code. All right? And it's the blueprint of somebody's energetic and ultimately mental, physical, psychological manifestation of who they are in this world today. So, because we are energy beings, and there is that relationship between energy and mass and matter, with Einstein's thing of E equals mc squared, that shows you the relationship between energy and matter and how you can go back and forth between the two. DNA for us is that transfer point, is that connection point. And that's another topic that you can go deep into, and I may cover it later at a later date. So now, with systematic white supremacy and the white supremacy philosophy and mindset, because it is a fear-based ideology, as you can see, the only thing that it creates, it can create and can manifest, is what fear manifests, because in that vibration of fear, you can only create certain things. And what does the fear vibration create? Loss, lack, illness, struggle, those, etc. And it appears in the moment, okay, right now, and what we're experiencing today, that most of this loss, lack, illness, and struggle is experienced mostly by non-whites. And that's partially because those that are being harmed, okay, by this systematic suppression, they are not holding those that are doing the harm, that are perpetuating the system. They're not holding them accountable and responsible for the damage they've caused. And that's another part of this illusion, is that you don't have the power to do that or the ability to do that. All you need really is the intention to do that. And the intention, the unconditional intention to do that. That's key. You have to be unconditional about it. That means there's no judgment, there's no mentality of payback. It's just merely I am holding you accountable and responsible for this damage you've caused. It's not no harm. It's no longer no harm, no foul, no this, no that. I forgive when I really don't feel like forgiving, but I just feel like I have to say that because that might be the right thing to say. It's none of that. It's you have caused harm, and I hold you accountable and responsible for that. And it's, again, must be unconditional, because if there's any attachment to that, any judgment around that, you can't truly, fully, completely hold them accountable and responsible. You're always hanging on to some of that. Now, that's another topic I can get into. Right now, I'm just wanting to talk about the energy of white supremacy. So, what does this mean? Okay, it means that when you are operating in a fear, anger-based mentality, and it's the lowest level of fear, the most base level of fear slash anger, which is survival, which is I'm going to die if this doesn't happen. This is like the kind of fear you experience when you are held underwater and you need to take that next breath of air. It's that level. Okay? Again, you're only going to vibrate at these lower frequencies. You can only create what can be created when you are in these lower frequencies in your mentality and in your consciousness. So, and unfortunately, because of that, it keeps you out of the realm of having access to more effective solutions, to more, effective answers to how you feel, how you can exist and allow others to exist without having to control, manipulate, and abuse them. So, for instance, when you're in these lower frequencies, the only thing that you can think of is to control and manipulate and abuse and kill and annihilate. Those are the only solutions that can come to you because you're in this fear-based mentality. So that is what you do. And that is what is done. And, these solutions are not long-lasting. They don't provide abundance. They require a lot of effort to implement. It pretty much requires the entire Caucasian population to be a part of it, to take part, to perpetuate. And it's limited in scope, and most of the times just cause damage and destruction. So this fear-based philosophy, this systematic white supremacy, this fear-based philosophy, it's a perfect case study in how fear-based mindsets feed on themselves. For instance, the core of the white supremacist code is to perpetuate it. And in order to do that, you have to deny that it exists. So you can't be called on it. So if you're called on it, you'd have to do something about it. And this denial, it includes deflection, lying, playing dumb, including straw man arguments. And this mindset, unfortunately, reinforces staying in this illusion. And it does not support the truth. It does not support being accountable and responsible for your actions, because the implementing this philosophy, taking part in it, causes damage and destruction to others, and ultimately to those that are participating in it as well. Um, they don't see it right away, but that's ultimately them as well. And in addition to that, okay, it doesn't allow you to transcend, because you're always in denial. You're always you are always not wanting to be responsible and accountable for what perpetuating that philosophy on others does. The damage it does. You don't want to be accountable and responsible for that. So you're not supporting those that perpetuate systematic white supremacy, are not supporting themselves and being able to transcend it. And others that don't call them out on it are also supporting them, and they're supporting them and staying in their illusion. So it's not helping anyone. So, as you can see, another characteristic that shows up is control and manipulation. Because in the mindset of making sure you can survive, genetic survival, you have that. You have to, in your mindset, in that fear, you resort to control and manipulation of people that are non-white. And also convincing them to accept responsibility for the actions of white supremacists, no matter how much damage was caused. And you can see this in how the news media, you can see this in movies. I've noticed this characteristic. Watch some movies, watch certain movies. One of the things that I've noticed is that there's a pattern of people, like usually the main character, one of the main characters that's Caucasian, doing something and not really being held accountable, doing something that causes hardship on everybody else, but they're not really being held accountable for it. I mean, watch the movies real closely, because that's part of the patterning and conditioning that is done. Now this acceptance, okay, by the non-whites, this acceptance by non-whites allows the behavior of white supremacists to continue without fear of being held accountable. And it has become an elaborate game of illusion and subterfuge. So the manifestations that are created from this fear-based mentality, from this philosophy of systematic white supremacy, the manifestations that you see that come out of this philosophy when it's implemented, when it's manifested, when people are believing it and practicing it, are, I'm going to list a bunch of things, and you can see how that is being manifested today. Intimidation, insecurity, phobias, lack, frustration, violence, anxiety, struggle, dishonoring, inhibition, illness, attachment, disease, confusion, victim role, arrogance, repression, holding back, betrayal, lying, defensiveness, judgment, blame, envy, denial, and irrational reactions. And you can see how these are exhibited today in people that are practicing white supremacists or practicing white supremacy, whether it is conscious or subconscious. So, what does this mean? This is what you sign up for when you choose to play with somebody who hasn't chosen to transcend this fear-based mentality. Because remember, this is really core in their beliefs. And if they haven't actively worked on this to transcend, actively, they still have it. They may not want to have it. They may consciously want to, be good, we are the world, and believe that, embrace that. But if they haven't addressed it at the subconscious core root level, then they are still operating in this mindset on a subconscious level. And your subconscious mind is responsible for 90% of what you create. It's responsible for 90% of your choices, of your actions, of your thoughts and beliefs. So consciously you may think the opposite, but your 10% is going against that 90%, and your 90% is going to win out every time. So again, if you want to create something that empowers you, and you surround yourself in some way, shape, or form with those that see your empowerment as a threat to their very being, you are not involving that fear-based energy into your creation. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that if you're working with somebody who subconsciously feels if you getting better, if you having more of a more power, more empowered, feel better about yourself, and are less likely to look outside of yourself for approval, for your survival, because you've tapped into that inner knowing. If you're with somebody and they see you going in that direction, and they see that if this person goes there, my life is at risk, my happiness, my place in this world is at risk if they do that. Okay. They will subconsciously or consciously do what they can to prevent you from doing that. And it's just a natural human reaction. It's just a natural human response. So, if you are still wanting that, if you are insisting on being with this person, then you have to ask yourself, what is it within you that you would want to sabotage what you're doing from the very beginning? That you'd want to put that roadblock up. What is it within you that doesn't say, no matter what, I want to create this for myself, for my family, no matter what? Okay, so there's something inside of you that being with this person is more important than you creating your own freedom. So at this point, as a non-white person, you have two choices. You can play in the illusion by choosing to create through this fear and get eaten up. Because let's face it, in the game of fear, the white supremacists are the ones at this time that have the deck stacked towards them. So in the game of fear, they're the game masters. They have it down. They have it down. And you'll get eaten up. And they have the largest number of people that are playing by those specific rules. And if you're in that game and you're kind of the only one, you're going to get eaten up. The other option you have is you can choose to play in another sandbox entirely and manifest and create what you want through being unconditionally responsible, which is not fear. Because when you're creating through being unconditionally responsible, you're in a completely different energy. You're completely different energy level, different consciousness. And you have access to things that they don't. You have access to solutions. You have access to people and ideas and energies and help that they do not, because they do not exist there. So they cannot access it. So what does that mean exactly when you're being unconditionally responsible? That's being responsible for you and what you say that you want without judging, without judgment, blame, guilt, or shame. It means addressing your fears and transcending them and knowing that you have been programmed to allow abuse and to take responsibility for what does not belong to you and to look to where your true freedom lies, which is within you. We've been programmed to look outside of ourselves to them for everything. Understand that though these programs, unless they've been addressed directly, still reside within us, still reside within our subconscious. And remember, okay, our subconscious is 90%. So unless they're addressed, they will drive our choices. You must realize also that the misperceptions you have within yourself are holding you back and keeping you down. And address the self-hate that causes so much strife within the community, within families. And this is why we blame each other instead of looking to ourselves when we are, instead of looking to ourselves and what we are harshly, or what we are contributing to the situation, Okay? So instead of always blaming the other person and pointing to the other person and saying, you're what's wrong, like black men is what's wrong with the community, black women are what's wrong with the community, this, that. Look to yourself and say, okay, what can I do differently to be a contribution to the community? What can I do differently? So this is why we blame others. Because we're not looking at ourselves and saying, what can I do differently? So this self-hate that we have, that's been carried on and passed down, it's part of the control and the manipulation that has been put on us. It keeps self-hate keeps us from wanting to look inside of ourselves. And because we judge ourselves, that self-hate is a strong judgment on ourselves, that we're not good enough, that we're not worthy, all types of things. And so we don't want to look at that because we don't want to be reminded of that. And that's all illusion. It's all illusion. It's not true. But we've bought it. We've bought into that. And it can be, painful to bring that up, but that is what must happen. And an example of how we have been trained not to look at ourselves is, how many times have you grown up and said, well, therapy is for white people because they're weak and blah, 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 blah. And that's what we must do. We must look at ourselves, because that's the only thing that's going to free us. So as long as we don't look at ourselves, we cannot change. There is no way to change unless we look inward. And the more we do that, the more we transcend, the less and less influence systematic white supremacy will have in our lives, until it's just a minor inconvenience, till it's, well, what is that? So having said that, this puts a different light on black people interacting with white people, or non-white people interacting with white people. Coming from a purely energetic sense, when you are interacting regularly with someone who is in fear-based pattern of genetic survival, you'll be affected by that fear. Because we are energetic beings on this planet living in a more dense energy body. So we're affected by others' thoughts, projections, and intentions. And how many times have you stood next to somebody and you didn't feel right, or you might have felt really relaxed, or you suddenly had these thoughts pop into your head. It's like, what is this about? I don't normally think about this. That's because you're being affected by somebody else's energy. You're being affected by somebody else's projections. And these projections aren't just necessarily location-based. Somebody can affect you with their projections all the way across the country. And you have to know that, because you, as a non-white person, have the entire white race, for the most part, okay, the ones that are embracing white supremacy, or they don't even have to embrace it. They just feel comforted by it. You're being projected on by the entire group of people. Okay, certain projections, and so you need to understand that so you can be aware and begin to protect yourself from that. Now, something else that I want to share with that is that when you are surrounding yourself, you take, and you're not aware of it, you unconsciously take responsibility for what does not belong to you. And that's in that you begin to manifest different outcomes that you don't initially intend to manifest. So it can take you off course from what you're wanting to create. All right. So if you're wanting empowerment and you're consistently interacting with those that see your empowerment as directly affecting their existence in a negative way, all right, then, as I said before, they're going to do whatever they can to keep you from being empowered. And this can be your best friend, it can be your spouse, it can be your in-laws, it can be, your co-worker. If anybody that has not addressed this fear within themselves, that's who it can be, because you are going to trigger that reaction in them. So, ultimately, all right, if you're wanting to create something and accomplish something, you have to surround yourself with people who are all on the same wavelength, people who are all on the same page. This includes your personal as well as your professional life, because, wherever you are, you bring yourself with you. And you have to realize again, that if you're affected by others' energy fields, by their thoughts and projections and beliefs, you begin to bring these beliefs with you. Their beliefs begin to become part of your beliefs. And so you must also realize that if you are in a sexual relationship with this person, the influence is that much stronger because now you have a buy-in. There's a certain um, buy-in that you have because you're in this type of relationship. You want this relationship to succeed, and so you're willing to do what you can to make the other person happy. So if that other person being happy is you not being empowered, you're going to ultimately give up your own empowerment for that to happen. Because, as they say, happy wife, happy life. And if that's what you want to have, that's what will happen. So you have to decide what is more important to you. Is it more important that you have the kind of close, intimate connections with someone who hasn't transcended their fear of a genetic annihilation? Is that more important to you, or is your empowerment more important to you? Because you have to understand that, you're going to also bring that energy, their energy, into other groups of people that you work with, and you can unintentionally bring conflict into that group that you don't mean to bring into the group. You may never notice this because because for many it's a subconscious fear. And the only time that you may notice their fear, well, let me back up a little bit. Okay, you may never notice that they have this fear because you subconsciously aren't going to do anything to bring it up. You subconsciously aren't going to do anything to trigger it. Because in systematic white supremacy, as a non-white person, you're not in the winning position. So there's even more of a fear to keep the white spouse happy because there's now a safety component attached to it. So you are really less likely to do anything to challenge that, to make them unhappy, to trigger that fear, trigger that core fear of genetic annihilation. So, again, you won't ever trigger it, and it's bad for you because, one, you're not really allowing yourself to be who you truly are. Two, they don't get the opportunity to transcend their fear and be able to grow from it and transcend their, any white supremacist ideology they have. And three, you continue to be affected by their projection and energy. And anything that you want to do that opposes it will not be likely to happen. Because again, you're almost in that type of relationship, you're almost in a fear-based, or not fear-based, you're almost in a survival-based mode. And it's not upsetting the white partner. So it's not triggering that life and death response to their fear. So ultimately, it's asking yourself the question, what do I want to surround myself with? What do I want to create in my life? And what will support me in being able to create it with grace, ease, and abundance? And if you realize that the most important thing for you to have is to have that partner that hasn't transcended the fear, then be honest with yourself and say, hey, it's more important for me to be with this person and have experience all the things that come with this type of relationship, and be truthful with those that you may work with and say, hey, this is more important to me than anything else. This is more important to me than my empowerment. And then those that work with you can then make a decision as to if they want to be affected by that energy or not, because that energy will be there. Um, it just is. There's not anything you can do about it. We're all affected by the energy, and so it's going to be there. And so they can make a decision if they want to deal with that energy or not. So that's the best way, because then at least you're being in integrity with your choice, and you are in the truth of what you're choosing and of where things truly are. So if one day you do decide to do it differently, you are at least doing it from a foundation of truth and not a foundation of illusion. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Was a little bit longer than what I meant to say, but this is a complex subject, and looking at it from an energetic viewpoint will really, I feel, can really give you a different perspective on why people choose things the way they choose, why people behave the way they behave and respond the way they respond. And then you can look at it from a more objective point of view instead of taking it personally, because you want to understand that especially now in Trump era, white people are doing the things they do because it is a life and death. It's not personal. It's they are doing what they feel they need to do to survive. And when you do it from a fear-based mentality, you get exactly what you're seeing today. So the best thing you can do for yourself as a non-white person is to do what you need to do to get out of that sandbox. Because when it comes to creating through fear, they're going to win. They have it down right now. So create another way. Create through unconditional responsibility, and make choices through unconditional responsibility. And you will begin to shake off that yoke. And there's nothing that they will be able to do. They'll never be able to control or manipulate you again when you are creating that way, because they don't have access to you. They can't reach you when you do that. So at any rate, I will end it here. And if you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear your ideas on what I've shared with you. And share the video if you find it helpful. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.